Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming by and spending some time this evening and missing the concert that evidently is going on that you could be at otherwise. When I met with John this afternoon at lunch, we went over a number of things concerning the setup of the club and thought that perhaps this particular presentation would be a good, simple launching point. I've made this presentation a few times at the USU Soccer Workshop, which is our annual national convention that we do and moves around the country. The last one was in Fort Worth, Texas. The next one this coming February will be in Louisville, Kentucky. The next one after that will be in Boston, Massachusetts, and we move it around each year in our 4 regions that we have the United States divided into. And this is a presentation that we've done a few times just to get the ball rolling for us. So at any time you have questions or comments or observations on something that comes up on here, go ahead and fire away. And what we're looking at in here is throwing out some ideas as to what could be some of the structures and designs of some of our soccer clubs, knowing that a whole bunch of them are in various stages of development across the United States. Now, it's hard for you to read because we're a little bit below the screen there, but you'll like who this is from. And I think it's a particularly good comment or quote from him. There are many people, particularly in sports, who think that success and excellence are the same thing. They are not the same thing. Excellence is something that is lasting and dependable and largely within a person's control. In contrast, success is perishable and often outside our control. If you strive for excellence, you will probably be successful eventually. People who put excellence in first place have the patience to end up with success. An additional burden for the victim of the success mentality is that he or she is threatened by success of others and resents real excellence. In contrast, the person fascinated by quality is excited when he or she sees it in others. So we've put that up there at the beginning of this presentation regarding player development and the design of soccer clubs to get our folks all across the country thinking about, to an extent, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? What is the purpose of our club? What service does it provide to our community? How is it enhancing the community in which we live? How will it be in 5 years or in 50 years in the legacy that we leave with it, those of us who have the reins of the club at this moment in time? So just something to begin to think about. Well, of course, I'm coming at it from the coaching perspective, as opposed to the administrative perspective, who quite rightly would have to think a good deal about our infrastructure of a club. How do we do our business plan? How do we provide our facilities? How do we improve our facilities, develop facilities? How do we come up with funding in our budget for the development of personnel, to develop our administrators by sending them to state meetings, national meetings, by developing our coaches or referees by sending them to referee or coaching courses and so on. But for me as the coach, I'm thinking a lot of it from the perspective of how does the club impact the players, which is really our only product that we have as a club, as a soccer club, is developing players. And what's the quality of what we're developing? With the idea in mind that the main purpose is to develop lifetime participants in the sport. Knowing that the statistics show us that less than 1% of all of the 3.5 million registered players across the United States in soccer clubs like yours will ever end up being at the professional level. At a maximum, 2% will ever play college soccer. 2%. Less than 2% will earn a scholarship at the college level. Less than 0.1% of all of our players across the U.S. will ever make it onto one of our national teams or the Olympic team. Less than 0.1%. So we have to take a look at what are we doing that's impacting that 99.99%, that 98% of players that are the bulk of everyone that we have participating. Those, by and large, will be the people who will someday be buying tickets to go watch that 2% or 1% play with the Philadelphia Union or with the WPS knock on wood, they survive as a league, or watch our national teams live or on television as we perform internationally. They will also be the ones who become the next generation of coaches, the next generation of referees, the next generation of administrators that operate our soccer clubs. So they're vitally important to us, not only in the immediate horizon, but in the long term too. So we have to look at the continued development of our clubs. What's necessary in order to meet this increasing demand for player development. Because one of the things that I'm here teaching a National Youth License course, and one of the things that we touch upon in that course is that we have now become a soccer nation. We don't always recognize that about ourselves. We don't, not necessarily all of us believe that about ourselves. But by every measuring stick, we are a soccer nation. We have millions of players, the 3.5 million that I mentioned, that's just within the USU soccer ranks. That's not counting AYSO, high school soccer, college soccer, the Police Athletic League, the YMCA. When you throw all of that into the mix, according to the Sporting Goods Manufacturers Association of America, we have about 8 to 10 million active players. Active on their counting being, oh, you played once this year, you're an active player. You played 365 days this year, you're an active player. But we have approximately 8 to 10 million at the youth level, and then you throw in the adult level, and those numbers go up a little bit more. So by FIFA's head count, the big count that they did back quite a few years ago, I think it's exaggerated to be honest with you. They estimate there's about 15 million players, soccer players, youth and adult in the United States. We might be relatively close to that number when you throw in all of the unaffiliated players that are playing in ethnic leagues in different parts of the country that aren't registered with anyone. And you throw in all of those other groups that we talked about. So we are a soccer nation in terms of participation. When you look around the country at our facilities, soccer facilities that we have now and that are being developed and will be developed, we are certainly a soccer nation. When you look at the number of high schools and universities that have programs, we're a soccer nation. By measuring the health of a professional league, we're in good shape. We're now at the 15-year mark for MLS. The 15-year mark was the last year of the NASL. Those of us old enough to remember those days. So we have a healthy professional league, and internationally we're competing at every level with every age group, as well as the majority of nations. As a matter of fact, the majority of nations would be like to be in the top 20 in the world, as we regularly are with our men's and women's national teams. So we are a soccer nation, and we have to recognize that we are now at a stage of real evolution. And one of the things that I talked to the coaches about is that during the 70s and 80s, those of you that were a part of that soccer boom, whether it be as a parent, as a player, as a coach, whatever role you were playing, we had that soccer boom through the 70s, through probably even the early 90s. But if you remember the 1980s, we skyrocketed in growth. I mean, every year we were adding on 10,000 players per state across the country. So hundreds of thousands of players across the country. And it was growing so rapidly that our clubs were just scrambling left, right, and center to find a field to play on. The outfield of the baseball diamond will do. Any patch of grass would do. Find anybody that's breathing to be a coach or a referee or an administrator, and boom, thank goodness you're here. You're now a coach. You're now a referee. You're now the team manager. And we survived all of that with all of the comments of we don't have enough fields, we don't have enough refs, we don't have enough coaches. Interestingly enough, I still hear that comment being made all across the country. But maybe that's a good sign, too, that we're continuing to have some growth. But now we're at a stage where the boom is over. We're growing, but it's now a steady, incremental growth. It's not skyrocketing growth. So now we're at a stage where a lot of our infrastructure is in place. And we have to take a look at now, how do we go back and accept the fact that the majority of our soccer clubs all across the country got started with no blueprint. They got up and going, but no blueprint on how to be a soccer club. And so now we're kind of backtracking a little bit, we being US Soccer and USU Soccer, and we're backtracking a little bit and providing some ideas in regards to a blueprint or blueprints, because there has to be a number of different designs to meet the different community needs.